All right. Hi, Mr. Girl. Here we are, podcast number 3. How you feeling today?
Pretty good. Did you get any responses from your podcast, our last podcast on the best sport for humans to play?
Yeah, I think they enjoyed it, some of the students, but they could just be lying to me to make me feel good. But I think some of them enjoyed it, and some of them responded back on on their Google site. They put what their favorite sport was. So it was interesting to see the different sports that they chose.
I definitely had some favoring of hockey being a Canadian
Good.
school. There was definitely some hockey favorites in
I
there. And
agree.
then,
Even we didn't talk about that, but in terms of watching on TV, I think hockey's pretty good, pretty up there, entertaining to watch.
yeah. And of course, my endurance athletes loved the endurance sports. And like Ava, who does a lot of triathlon, she's like, "You're doing 3 sports at once." But I had to argue a little bit back, like, but there's there's tools, but there's not the same amount of teamwork or strategy as a group of people that you would use. But still, she had a good argument. And
Yeah, it's
Claire,
hard. It's a hard one. It's pretty subjective, and that's the beauty of it. There's no science to it. It's all subjective, which leads us into another subjective argument we're going to embark on today, which
yeah,
is what is the balance between different types of fitness. So you have, I mean, a simple way to define it is you have weight training, you have cardiovascular activities, and then you have recreational fitness. So I think we're going to talk today about how we balance those and which ones we prefer and which ones we think are more important and less important, perhaps.
yeah, it's super interesting because I think I've changed my mind as you go through your stages of life. Um, Used to really focus on a lot of cardio, which is really great, and we should always do some, I believe, for our cardiovascular system. But running, for example, it's hard if you don't train properly. More people, as they get older, keep running, and they think, "Oh, I used to run 10K," and they go out and run 10K, and then they're injured and they can't run for 3 weeks. You really have to do it progressively. Maybe biking's a little less impact, and swimming, for example, but the argument is you don't create muscle tone in those or bone density.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the favor sort of falls into doing body weight and weight training.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I agree. And that's one thing my wife always nags me about, Marielle. She's great. She's a personal trainer. She always, as you know, I'm not the biggest fan of weight training. And
you go hard in the studio, but
go hard. Yeah. You see my 10-minute workouts. So she knows that, but she tries to motivate me because just as you get older, our testosterone rate naturally drops, right? So weight training is one of the best ways to just boost that back up, which is important for a lot of things as we get older. So, I mean, that's one thing where I'm working on. I know I admire you for that. Your weight training routine is pretty solid from what I've seen. You have good structured 1-hour workouts, and everyone's different, right? You seem very good at those. I seem not able to really get those done as much as I want.
But on the other hand, when you introduced Ido Portal and we look at movement, now this could correlate to our teens. I really liked, maybe you could explain a bit, of being more of a generalist that can help you to be a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
If you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so Ido Portal, if you're in my P classes, you probably heard that name before, and he talks about that a lot. And I think that's what a philosophy I've been trying to adapt into my life, is just being more of a generalist and not compartmentalizing sports and activities so minutely. I think having everything kind of transfer, realizing that everything transfers, it's all different forms of movement. And I mean, I take it pretty far, where I really enjoy the recreational aspect of movement. And then through that movement, if you're doing it properly, you get the weight training and you get the cardiovascular endurance. So not really telling yourself, this is my structured workout time, just moving all day long, and then things just naturally unfold. So.
And I was looking at some of his stuff where he does train actual athletes, and some of his followers were saying, look, I was really good at basketball. And what are the components of basketball? You have your skill, and you have your cardio, and you have your agility. Well, why use basketball to learn agility? For example, you could do parkour. You could learn a lot of movement and agility through that. Or you train Conor McGregor and you look at the dancing moves they incorporated. And then that helped the specialists become better because it became more of a generalist in these other areas. And we always focus, our body breaks down. If you only play basketball, you only play volleyball, you break down. But if you incorporate more of a multi-sport aspect to it and incorporate that into your lifestyle, it's going to benefit you I believe, in your key sport. If I could do more gymnastics moves, I'm going to be more mobile. I'm going to be more agile.
Yeah, I wonder, that's one of the most interesting arguments I always thought, is when with the professional athletes, when they're told to focus on that one sport. So, if you have someone who's excelling at golf or hockey or basketball at age 10, I know there's always been debates, and when coaches or when people tell them to just focus on that one sport, or when it's better to just, if you're in high school and you're going to go to the NBA, you're going to be a basketball star, you can still play on the football team, and you can still play on another team. Or when do they kind of guide you to one? Do you know what the current research is on that? I remember they used to promote like multi-sport athletes in high school.
It's still really huge, but our students are really under pressure to be in club sport, and club sport runs all year round. So whether you're a hockey player, soccer player, volleyball, it goes all the time. So the students are really losing that time to learn other things and other movements. And I think it's important for us through PE and through our training and getting the students to join other sports. It's only going to help. If you're on the rugby team and you can make the basketball team, that's only going to help you in your movements. And then incorporating things like, I know people are scared of dance and gymnastic type movements and flow, but those things absolutely help. So the research shows they want multi-sport athletes, but the problem is they're being pushed to only play one sport to be really good at it. So there's this to be really good, you got to put a lot of time in, and then they want you all the time playing that sport, and then you're supposed to be multi-sport. So it is a tricky.
You can see how people get kind of burnt out and not really know what to do anymore, because it seems like the good balance would be, 3 or 4 workouts, weightlifting workouts a week, a couple focused cardiovascular workouts, playing your main sport in season, practicing your main sport out of season, and then also dabbling around with other sports. So, I mean, that's what I promote, and that's what I think is the best way to do it. But that takes, 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day all year long. So you have.
And then if we were talking to parents or grandparents, what I would say, I mean, look at your dad, for example. I look at my dad, and they have done lifelong activity where they're busy in their yards gardening, or they're going for walks. And it's that being nudged into constant motion, being nudged into like activity where it doesn't have to be a strenuous thing all the time, but you get your heart rate elevated and you have a long life of being active. And it's hard for a teenager to think that. But.
And that's huge, right? We've talked about that a lot, you and I, in our little discussions, how just as people get older too, I think a lot about what is the goal of working out, right? If for me, I'm not going to be a professional athlete, my goal is just injury reduction and longevity. So what's the best thing for that? Probably not like intense workouts all the time, because I'm probably going to get injured and put a lot of unnecessary stress on my joints. It's probably just better to go for really long active walks and just do things that get my body moving. But I think in our culture, we're in a bit of a phase where, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's a bit superficial. We're very keen on like our bodies looking a certain way, which we're going to talk about in our next podcast, right? What the ideal body type is. And then a lot of people are just working out, and that's the end goal, is just creating a certain physique, where I would argue that's maybe not what the end goal should be. That's a byproduct of working out, but not focusing on.
Just another thing we could talk about is you don't actually get that physique from working out. It's part of it, but it's probably 80% diet, right? Like you really have to be keen on your diet and genetics.
Okay. Well, so that's pretty interesting stuff. It's hard to boil it down, but I think the main question for our students is, what are you guys doing to stay active? Are you weight training? Are you doing your cardiovascular endurance runs, bikes, and swims? Or are you just playing sports? And which one do you enjoy most, and why?
And importantly, you could add some flexibility into that now.
Yeah.
While we're off.
Yeah. So now might be a chance, if maybe you've been focusing on one of those things, to add, what could you dapple around with? What could you play with that's new that you haven't done or been neglecting? Like for me, that's weight training. And I think today is the day. I've been saying that every day, but today's the day. I'm going to pick up some dumbbells and I'm going to curl them. Not a log, not a water jug, some dumbbells.
You should do the COVID or the quarantine 19. That's where it's going to come from, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good. So what do you think? I need to work on my weight training. I know that. What's yours, you think, your weakness right now?
I'm really working on my flexibility, just sort of something I've ignored, and I'm really starting to pay the consequences of it through my back and hips. I can really feel all this at-home computer time. I'm doing a lot of stretching, and then cardio for me is really diminished. I do a lot of interval HIIT training, but long distance. Biking's good. Running is really hard right now. So trying to work on it.
So just accept where you're at, everyone. I'm sure some of you guys all start to get a better sense what your strengths and weaknesses are, and hopefully use this time to work on some of the things you haven't had a chance to before. Get off your screens. Don't sit on your screens all day. Keep moving. And stay tuned for our next podcast, which is, what is the ideal body type? All right. Anything
All right.
else, Mr. Guru?
I don't know, a little bit of TikTok or something.
This. High five. Miss you guys. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.